So this is a video that I'm making kind of for myself, but I might upload this later. But just want to be super clear on what we need to do. What's the key KPIs in this business to track to basically make sure that we are getting as many installs as possible, which is our end goal. And how do we take a lead all the way to an install? And what are the key KPIs in the middle of that to track to make sure that we're on the right track to be able to consistently, be efficient with the leads that we have. So, the first thing is the leads. Obviously, there's different sources of leads. We have our Facebook ads that we're running, which bring in a certain amount of leads. We have different age data that we have. We have a different kind of bundle of leads that we can use, and the main thing is basically a clean source of quality leads that we can track how they move over to the other side, which is contacts, which is the main thing. The main kind of KPI after lead is the contact rate. How many of these leads can we actually get on the phone with and get, on a conversation with, contact rate. Like, and then there's going to be a decent amount of leads that um, fall off that we have that we just cannot contact, right? So how many of those leads that we have can we actually get in touch with? Because we can't get in touch with them, we can't close them. I just put 10% on everything because I don't really have the exact ideal numbers or current numbers that we're running right now. So I just put 10%, and then we're just going to adjust it as we go on. But just to have it there. But contact is a very first thing. We need to be able to contact. Recently, I have been dialing all of our past leads, and the contact rate has been completely dog. Right? I literally yesterday I dialed 60 leads and got zero contacts. So it matters on the lead type, the lead age, the dialer that I'm using, the phone number that I'm using, and the time of day. Like all these different factors lead into contact rate, which is the first thing that we just need to have dialed in. And also just kind of keep track. We don't have to be perfect at this, right? But we just need to keep track where we're at and how we can improve that contact rate, right? So that's the first thing, right? So, ideally, what's a good contact rate? It depends, right? We obviously the more the better, right? The more the better. I think the first thing that I would do for me is um, get a baseline of what our contact rate is right now, and then work from there. I don't want to set like a crazy goal or a crazy ideal. Just where are we at right now, contact rate wise? I don't know what it is. It says 10% here. I don't know what our contact rate is. That is something that is a KPI. We do need to track. It's very important that we track what our contact rate is, and get an idea of what that is, and then build from there. Tweak the things that we need to tweak, whether that's speed to lead, whether that's amount of dials that we're doing, whether that is the time of day that we're dialing, whether that is a phone number that we're using, all these things to make sure that we can get in contact with as many leads as possible. So that is important. That is a key KPI in the business, is the first KPI, which is how many of our leads can we contact. Now we have the people that we contact, right? Let's say 100 leads, we contact 10 people if it's a 10%, whatever, right? Do we have the amount of people that we have been able to talk to? Obviously, there's going to be a decent amount of those people. The first thing they say when they hear you on the phone is, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to, I'm not interested anymore. There's going to be a lot of those. So out of all of these people that we contact, how many of these can we actually get to set an appointment with us, right? How many of these actually are not just BSing and just filling out the form for no reason, or just don't even want solar anymore if they're an age lead? How many of these people that, let's say out of 10 people, how many of these people can we get to set an appointment? That is the next spot in our KPI is, how many contacts, the people that we actually speak to, can we get them to set an appointment? If out of 10 people we can set an appointment with two or three, that's a good place to start, and then kind of build from there. That is really nice place to start. And then, build from there. Obviously, we'd like it to be higher, but with the quality of leads, okay, everything depends on the quality of leads, right? Is kind of depends on the set rate. Depending on the quality of leads, depends on how good, the set would be. Because the better the leads, the less people that are not interested, or whatever. If it's really crappy leads, kind of like what we have right now, they're really crappy. They're really cheap per lead, but they're really crappy. So, this kind of allows us to, instead of using our money, we can use our, efforts to sift through all these leads and find the nice ones. So, we're going to have a really low set rate on these leads, and that's okay because our lead cost is very low, right? So it just depends. So like you can't have an ideal like, oh, I want a 50% set rate, but I'm only paying $1 per lead, right? I mean, it's not realistic, and it's okay. You don't need to have a 50% set rate if you're only costing you $1 per lead. You can have a 10% set rate, or 15% set rate, and be really really good with these with this cost of leads. Even less, 5% set rate, 7% set rate. If I'm only paying $1 for every lead, $2 for every lead, then I can get away with a lower set rate, right? But if I was paying, let's say, um, you know like 10, 20, $30 per lead, then I need to make sure my set rate is good. And usually it would be, because it's the leads are more quality most of the time. So that is something in terms of the metrics. Like, you can't have an ideal number. Just depends on the lead. And then, yeah. Um, and also contacts also depends on the lead as well. So appointments. So next, after appointments, it's sit. So there's people that set an appointment, right? But out of all the people that set the appointment, how many of those people actually sit down with the closer? Actually sit down with the closer with the bill in hand. If they don't have a bill in hand, some people don't, with some sort of usage with the utility company, right? Either a bill or usage with the utility company. Um, how many of those people actually sit down with the closer? Out of the appointments. Um, you know, again, depending on the cost of the lead, depending on the whatever, you can get away with different things. So I like to, again, get an idea, right? Take 1, 2, 3 weeks and run the data and get an idea. Okay, we are getting this many leads. We're talking to this many people. We are whatever. Get an idea what our sit rate is from appointments to sits, and then track that KPI. Um, so that is the main thing right now. And then after that, um, sit basically would mean with a bill or with usage. And then after that, we have how many of the people that actually sit, like actually like have a bill or usage with them and actually sit down. How many of those sits are valid, meaning they're closable. So they pass credit, they have a property type that qualifies, their design makes sense to a certain extent, and also, yeah. So also, it doesn't also mean that if they don't want to show up for the call, and maybe they are not ready for the call, they're not, the wife isn't there, the decision makers aren't there. It's not like a ready to go sit. That doesn't mean that it's not a valid sit. It might still be a valid sit. That might still be closable. It might mean that it's not a sit, right? And it needs to be rescheduled to be like a nice sit. It needs to be reset. So it goes back into the appointment pile. If it's something that is like they're there, but like they sat, like there's a husband or a wife there by themselves, but the other decision maker isn't there, that's not considered an appointment. It's considered a very eager lead. Or that's not considered a sit. It's an appointment. It's not considered a sit. It's considered a very eager appointment that you can work for it to become a sit. A sit is somebody that is basically there with the husband, wife, decision makers, all that stuff. And you can consider those sits if you want to just like count the people that are just showing up to the call. But I mean, that's not really a sit, if that makes sense, right? But That's what valid sit would be, is if they meet every requirement for them to be actually be able to install and close. Okay. And then there's closes, right? Obviously, which is people that sign docs. Again, this is very important. You can't. I have an issue with this, which I just consider people closed even when they're not closed, which is the number one rule of sales. Don't consider people closed and not closed. So closed means every document is signed, everything that needs to be done is done, and the customer is in a good state of mind to be able to go to install. You want to make sure that they understand what's going on, they're happy with what's going on, they don't have any lying regrets or objections that are just sitting and dormant. You want to get all of those out and make sure that you hit all of those, and make sure all of everything else is completely covered, and then that is when you can consider that a close, right? So only a valid sit can become a close. So you have the conversion rate. Again, with this conversion rate from valid sit to close, I would ideally like that to be, regardless of the lead, if it's a valid sit, if they're both there and they're valid, you want that to be closer to 30%, depending on certain situations. 20 to 40% is where I would like to be at. For me, 20 to 40% of valid sits should be closed, which is a good kind of metric. And again, there's follow up, right? There's valid sits that don't turn into closes. Those are going to a follow up file. Okay, these sits were valid, but they haven't been closed. What can we do to make them close? And if they are just a dead lead or lost close, then we just put them into a lost close, and just make sure that the ones that aren't lost but are still valid, we're hitting them frequently to try to get an idea of what's going on, what's the situation with what's the story with the deal, what's missing, and then try to get those over to closes, right? Those are really the low hanging fruits that you just want to find out. Either put them in the close loss pile or put them in the closes pile. So that is the close percentage. Want it to be generally between 20 and 40%, depending on certain factors. And then you have installs, right? This I think we do really well in this, in terms of getting all of our documents to basically run through this. This is probably one of the best things that we do as a company at in New York, more than anybody. Is our install process is very streamlined. The only thing that can stop installs is DQs during site survey. um, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, we usually install. Yeah, as long as it's a good close and the customer is not canceling. I rarely have cancels. Like, I can't remember the last time I had a cancel after a close. I mean, I can, but it wasn't really like close well. Like, if it's closing well, then it should rarely ever cancel. I mean, unless it's a DQ at site survey or stuff like that, then it goes back into the sit pile. It wasn't a valid sit, right? If it's DQ'd at the site survey, but usually we like to get a decent percentage of the install. Again, I'm not going to set any numbers. I'm going to set a benchmark of where we are at right now over the next 1, 2, 3 weeks. Just track that over. Okay, what are we doing? Like, where are we at right now as a company? Where are we at with these KPIs? Track that, get an idea of what that is, and then start setting goals and start setting expectations, and try to improve on from where we're at. So yeah, I think this is the main idea: getting a lead all the way to an install. These are the main KPIs to track, and each one has its own kind of ways to improve, right, on each KPI. So just making sure that whatever's missing, whatever's low, and whether it's low or not, trying to find ways to improve on each and every KPI is a really good way of basically making sure that we get as many deals as possible. So that is it for that. Again, action steps are to just track every single KPI for over the next few weeks, and then we can go ahead and build from there.